Hello and welcome to our first stream of a long series of streams where me and a lot of the molecules will be showing you different facets of dreams. I chosen my first one to focus on the story of developing the tools. And mainly I will focus on the art tools more than the whole range of the dream tools. As you know, Dream is a vast platform that allows you to do all sorts of things, from playing and surfing amazing infinite games and experiences, and being a social network of gaming, all the way to creating all sorts of things from animation, music, game, logic, everything. I'm going to focus more on the story of making the art tools. So, to start, the first thing I want to go back to was Little Big Planet, our first game, uh, where we decided to embark on the creative gaming quest. We wanted to share the tools of making games, make the whole thing expressive as well as impressive. So we wanted to really start by disarming and familiarizing everybody with the act of creativity. So we went in Little Big Planet back to our nostalgia, back to our childhood memories when you made a birthday party decorations or a school play from very simple accessories and props that you had in the house, cardboard boxes, sellotape. You paint them, you color them, and we wanted the aesthetic of Little Big Planet to do that sort of appealing and attracting people to have a go. We also found that this physical, tactile philosophy matched very well with the physics. The big idea that Dave, our technical director, had to allow the gameplay to be more playful and anarchic and fun. It was a sack boy or sack girl could grab anything, chuck it around, and be more playful. So this kind of familiar visual style with this tactile gameplay was the Little Big Planet Genesis, and our Little Big Planet community was astonishing. They took what we thought our early experiments and then took it to stratospheric heights. The amazing range of material that people have made. And the crowning event of that was in Little Big Planet 1, in the very early periods, not even, I think that was in the beta periods of Little Big Planet 1, where one of our community took the tools and made their own computer, their own calculator, using what was a very limited set of switches and gadgets. There wasn't even the full set of electronics that Little Big Planet had afterwards. So that showed us from a very early stage how imaginative the community is and how they take what we give in terms of tools to heights that we never expect. And then after Little Big Planet franchise developed and expanded, and after we did Tearaway, which was a beautiful world of inspired by origami and paper and had a lot of our creative ethos in it, but its focus was not making, its focus was the adventure. And we thought of Dreams. We thought to do the natural successor of Little Big Planet, but we wanted Dreams to be more ambitious. While Little Big Planet, not everything in it was made in Little Big Planet. The textures, the animations, the music, not all of it was done in the Little Big Planet engine. There was a lot of it imported from and created in other tools and assembled in Little Big Planet. It by far had a lot of features in it, but it wasn't creating every single thing from scratch. We wanted in Dream to tackle the impossible, to make one system, a platform that allows you to make all the disciplines from scratch, but also to be even more accessible on the accessible end and to be more deep on the deep end to compete with every digital game making suite out there. But I had a big problem to start with, personally, and I didn't have a reason to make dreams. I was like, why make such a colossal aspiration, especially that CG looks amazing. It's in a fabulous state. When you look at the movies that were around, and when you look at the games that are being developed, the visual quality and standard in both realism and stylization is in a very, very good place. And the tools that create that are obviously very, very powerful. Even when you go into phones and all that world, you see the very stylized end of the spectrum to the photorealistic to the sort of cartoony. It's just all very good. You can't even tell anymore when it's a movie or when it's a game. The quality is impeccable. But then we started looking at the tools that are used to make all this stuff. And the tools, these are just some a selection of screens, just random screens from different tools that are around. And these tools actually aren't that difficult. They are just what I call a wall of functionalities, feature after feature upon feature. And each one of the features are very good. And each one does a very, very useful thing. But they're all displayed to you like an aeroplane cockpit. And it's one observation that we made on the early days that, okay, maybe there is room to tackle the tools and the experience of making and question that. I personally had 3 moments in 2010 that really inspired me personally to work on dreams and to embark on this colossal mission. The first one was in Egypt, where I'm from. And this place in Egypt was called Ramses Wisawasif Tapestries. And it was founded in the 30s or in the 40s by this guy who was very, very ahead of his time. He had this idea where he will take very, very poor young people from the farms around in a very poor parts of Egyptian countryside and teach those young kids tapestry making. But not just to get them to churn them out and sell them in a sort of cheap way. By far, he was more thinking about an artistic incubator where they got the kids to go around in all the rural landscapes around them, get inspiration from nature, and then use the tapestry creation as their expressive form. But the key was time. They let them learn and hone their craft in as long as they needed. There was no deadline. There was no, you have to be good by next week. And then as their work started to show style, the guy who founded the place, who was educated like in international university, I think in France it was, and he took their work and exhibited it in very, very stylish museum-esque kind of presentation. And the work of all of them looked very similar to Gauguin or Cézanne or modern art of the time or a bit before. But the point was that this art came from uneducated in the arts people. And the best part of the story is that these pieces were sold at fine art quality or prices, and the money was shared 50-50 with those young artists. So they reaped a lot of return for the time, and they were a very good story after that. You can sort of investigate it further. But for me, the core of the point here was that art is inside people and not just an outcome of high education or extensive learning. There's something inside us. It's like another language that is dormant. The other end of inspiration for me was going to the Bauhaus Museum in that same trip in 2010, and I was wandering around the museums, and I stopped at this concept that was describing the Bauhaus philosophy. And it was saying something along the lines of it's not through, or it's only through constant contact with advancing technology, with the discovery of new materials and new ways of putting things together, that the creative individual can learn to establish a living relationship between the present time and tradition, and thus to develop a new approach to design. I loved it. I loved, because for an artist like me, why work on a new way of assembly? Just why? And I like the relationship between our responsibility to keep contact with technology, to keep discovering new ways of putting things together, is essential responsibility for us to tackle the traditional stories, to retell the same things, to re-express. But I liked that we have a duty to keep reassembling. And then the last part of this trip, we passed by Rome, which is my eternal sort of, I love Michelangelo, and the Sistine Chapel is my number one artist, still was all my life. And what I like about this particular artist is the obsessiveness. The guy worked on his own. He built the scaffolding, painted on the ceiling. He drew himself here on the left, painting the Sistine Chapel, and using a very primitive, the fresco paint of the time was very tedious to use, but his obsessiveness was the amazing multiplier. And the point here is that don't underestimate the obsessiveness of a human being. I like the idea that give anybody a medium, but you multiply it by their obsessiveness. As long as there is something to obsess about, like Michelangelo was obsessed about anatomy and the human body, and was a religious guy, but the brilliance of his work and composition, integration between anatomy and architecture, sublime. And that multiplier was my third inspiration. So art within us, the responsibility to reassemble and relate to technology, and the obsessiveness. I wanted to make a tool that makes people obsessive. So timeless tools was starting to form in our minds, and sensitive tools was starting to particularly start appearing in one's minds. The sensitive tools, by the way, means, or what we mean by that is the pencil, which is my favorite tool, is a sensitive tool. It's been with us for centuries, and the brilliance of it is that everybody gets it. You hold it, you make a mark, it makes a mark. You press hard, it makes a heavier mark. You press light and gentle, it makes a gentle mark. A child holds it and gets it straight away. But the nice thing about the pencil is that it captures your identity straight away. Look at the different styles of signatures of people, how different they all look straight away. And they're also something that you can keep getting better and better in expressing yourself with, like the Michelangelo sketch on the left or on the right here, where you see the sensitivity that can come from this simple tool, or not simple, sensitive tool. I think simple tools, ironically, are the softwares that are covered with buttons. Each one of these functions is very simple, but there's a lot of them placed around each other. A sensitive tool is actually nuanced, because there is a lot of, the pencil in how you hold it and how you press and stuff. But it's a universal tool. It's a tool that doesn't change on you and doesn't change in time. It's been the same a long time. And look at me and my child here. were starting to play with crayons and markers and stuff. And the brilliance is that he got it straight away. You make a mark, and we start talking the same language. And the only difference between a little child using a marker and an older artist who knows more things is the knowledge itself rather than the tool. There is no more buttons in an advanced pencil than a beginner pencil. The same process, me and my boy, when he's a bit older and the drawings are getting better. The best sensitive tool as well to use as an example is the piano. The piano was commissioned the word piano means quiet, I think, and it was commissioned to surpass the harpsichord, which was a keyboard instrument, but it had the same volume because it was a plucky instrument. And the piano was invented to allow the musician to play softly or very loud, to press a lot of the keys in the same time, thanks to the hammers, those hammers that hammer on top of the strings. And that's a sensitive tool because you instantly, when you start pressing, it makes a noise. You press hard, it plays hard. The width of the piano itself and the size of the keys, the distance between the half notes, it's all designed around the human proportion. That's why it stayed across centuries, from Mozart to Schubert to Nina Simone to Elton John. It's just endless. The geniuses who have continued to enjoy it. And my child, again, one of my baby, is a little video of her playing on my piano with her dummy, and see, she gets it. You press it, it makes a sound. I think this is what a sensitive, timeless tool looks like. I dislike tools that are trying to be a fast forward to success. You just press a button and you get a whole melody. I think, if you try to speed up gratification, you shorten the long term. So there is a balance here between trying to get tools that are pleasant, and make marks and sounds real quick, like the piano and the pencil, but also have the depth to keep going. And the digital paradigm is a bit different. What would the hook for dreams be? What would the hook for our tool be? We started talking about expressive tools. But expressive is a word, nobody will do tools and tell you, we actually really want them to be not expressive. Everybody wants to do an expressive tool, especially if you're doing tools. So what exactly do we mean by expressive? And in one of the terms that I really like to use is attractive tools. I like a process that is attractive to watch. When you watch Picasso show off here his light paintings or drawing, it's a product in its own right. Watching the artist working, or when you watch a caricature artist drawing in the street, they turned it into a performance. Or when you watch puppeteers puppeteering live for an audience, or this artist painting in front of a camera. Musicians obviously are the ultimate live performers because all their tools are not only good for designing a song, they're good for playing now, here and now, so they can make the music and create the music right here, right now. And these kind of tools were starting to inspire us for this keyword here, performance. We wanted to tackle the digital tools and to make them more like a performance. The act of watching someone create music, or someone create art, or someone create animation, or someone create a game, what needs to be as performancey as we possibly can make it. That would be the hook for us to achieve the sensitivity and to retackle that colossal mission. moving on to another concept that is close to me personally is what we call the tight and loose nowadays. Like the a tool or an engine. This is now me going to the art specific ness. And we wanted our engine, to be very capable to create the tight and the loose. My own background comes from architecture. I was trained as a scene designer, set designer. Some of my very old concepts of architectural schematics and elevations and sections and stuff. And then my other side is a painter, an expressive painter. That skyline of a city is felt result. It's something that I arrived at from feeling. So the tight and loose processes is something that is very core to one's training. But we wanted that to translate into Dreams engine and Dreams user interface, and that has to be, or at least I try to break it down here into some segments. First, the vision. I wanted to show how essential it is to have a vision. In Dreams, this video I'm going to, or before I show the video, I took some examples from history between breakthroughs in hardware and software. For example, when they invented the mouse as an input device, it changed the interface and the software as well, because suddenly you don't have to write commands all the time. You can just point and drag and drop and do all sorts of visual operations. So the UI instantly leaped as a result of this input device. So input device and hardware is very important in this equation. We can't just talk about software and philosophies and these kind of things and ignore the input device. When they made the touch screen or the pressure sensitive pens, again, a revolution in input device. And we can all see from our own lives how much we use touch screens and graphic tablets if you're an artist, and what that means to the result. And of course, all the software that came as a result of these breakthroughs in input device and hardware. So how does that all translate to us and Dream? First, the vision. All the inspiration points that I've talked about, how can we do a timeless tool, a gestural, a sensitive tool. We did this video that I'm going to show you now. We called it the painterly philosophy, and we were trying to show how we wanted the Dream engine to feel, the tight and loose shapes that we wanted it to be able to do, and the process itself. This was done way before we had our engine. These were some of my paintings, my concepts, and I wanted to show here that we wanted to make a tool that allows for the process to arrive at results, rather than always to know exactly what you're doing. We wanted to be able to work serendipitously and arrive at results. So these were some of our early mock-ups of what we wanted the marks to look like, the strokes, way before we had our paint features and our painterly engine and our flex and what was later named the flex. And we actually, I remember modeling these forms, and then Francis and Kengo, we were doing all sorts of tests together to try to mock up how we wanted to use the game controllers as our input devices to apply paint. That was before VR and before 3D became a sort of known concept for creating within a 3D space. We thought that the marks that you make in the world need to go all the way from the tight, like the stem of the tree, to the loose, and painterly. We wanted to be able to do these kind of painterly backgrounds that you're used to seeing in animations and stuff, and bring them to life fully in 3D. This was using other tools, off-the-shelf tools, and the results were not exactly what we wanted, but as close as we can make it. These again, using some of the marks that we wanted to be able to create with, and show that we wanted this particular tool to feel different. So this was one of our many concept videos that I will skip now and just move on so I can try to cover as much ground as I can. So vision, we had a vision of how we wanted the tools to feel, how we wanted the engine to look. Hardware breakthrough. When we first pitched Dreams, we were talking about transforming the PlayStation as a creative console. We wanted people to buy PlayStation because creating in it is the best experience you can get. And the hardware of the PlayStation and the input devices available are all the game controllers that are traditionally associated with gaming. We were to take these. This is our input devices, our tools. Gaming is very sophisticated in what it demands from the user to control a whole world, a whole environment, a whole character. And we wanted to take those tools, those cameras, those DualShock, the VR, everything in the PlayStation, and turn it into our palette. We wanted to transform the gaming tools to creative tools. So our hardware was the PlayStation and all its sensitive gaming controllers. And the focus of my presentation here will be on, obviously, the software, which is what we made, Dream. Here are some concepts I'm using for the art, especially, were breakthroughs. When we started looking at the Move controller, for example, and realizing that we can use our two hands to transfer the motion to our controllers. Very simple concept, but for 3D, it's immense. Because suddenly you don't have to use a 2D input to do 3D operations. Using the Move buttons here, for example, you press them and you drag yourself one by one in an operation we call the grab camera. So you're grabbing your point in space and you move yourself around. Now, this is a very 3D concept. You have to feel it to believe it. But we also kept going. I'm showing you here some videos done by our video department. I think these were done by Anthony, and he wanted to show step by step some of the breakthroughs that we did in our UI to make it an attractive tool, an expressive tool. Here you're pressing two buttons to zoom yourself in, and the last one is showing you that you can press a shortcut here to travel far into the scene at a quick zoom. I selected some of these videos not because I'm trying to do any tutorial here, because we have a lot of tutorials done by our fabulous tutorial team, Richard and the great team, and the effort that they all put together with Susie and Catherine and Tom. It's amazing work that the tutorial team have done to teach you Dream. What I am trying to show here is basically how in the UI design sense we build up to achieve the sensitivity or the attractive concepts that I was talking about in the first part of the presentation. This here is my best concept for you. Grabbing an object in space in 3D and placing it just like you place something on a table in front of you. This is motor skills and not any more or any less. And it keeps going. You want to scale an object, you grab it with your hand, and you shortcut press a button on your other controller, and that scales it. So as a result of a lot of these concepts, most of our features, you don't have to go to UI to pick operations. You want to clone, you do shortcuts. There is obviously discoverable ways of doing these things, but they're slower. I am here trying to make a very particular point of flowing UI, and I'm showing that to achieve expressivity, it's not only a word, it has to come from choices. Like, for example, you can go from stamping a single sphere to drawing with a sphere. You can go from cutting and adding just by tapping your controllers together. You swap your adding operations to cutting. You can soft blend by just twisting another shortcut or going to a spline form. Each and every one of those things are what you are used to seeing in its own tool or its own editor. In Dream, they are all accessible here and now. The now in creation is the rarest thing that UI serves. There is a lot of UI that serves deciding before or tweaking after. But to be able to change your forms live, here and now, in the one on the top left, you do an operation, you tap your controllers together, it squashes the shape, makes a hole in the shape, spins the shape, turns on the mirror. All these concepts are combined together to create what I'm going to show you here. This here is myself just combining some of these UI solutions all together to create what I think is how we achieved making 3D attractive. That's a cube I pull from my menu. And this cube I'm just placing in the world now. And cube, I'm just placing. And now I'm just starting to scale it with my shortcut to scale on my other controller. So just by scaling a cube, small, very small, and very large, I'm not going to a scale tool or anything. It's just all within that cube. I do one gesture, it turns to a cut. And now I can make holes. So these holes can become windows. These holes can further my design. I can zoom myself right in and I can do these kind of sculptural indentations. Zoom myself in with the zoom gestures. Do tiny little embellishments or zoom myself out, scale my cube massively and do massive cuts like that. So suddenly the cube has changed into a formation that is much more sophisticated than the initial cube. I tap my two controllers together and I am doing a stretch operation. Now I can make floors. I turn on one guide and this guide fixes my flat floor to one plane. I can either have it horizontal or vertical. So we have a lot of constraints and grids and guides that help you do more geometric shapes. The next thing here I'm showing is doing cuts with those flat squashed shapes. Even we have an operation here where I have squashed my cube to the point that it becomes a plane. And now a new mode of working has just been unlocked. I can now create with extruding rather than intersecting volumes. So this could have been in any other software another mode that you go to the extrude mode. But we chose to have it all as part of the qualities of the cube that you can do things to. And maybe some people will take them time to find that, oh, I didn't realize that you can do this squashed extrudy thing. But I don't mind that. I don't mind that it's a bit hidden. Anton, who was one of our amazing tools programmers, was pivotal in creating some of these philosophies. For example, this is one of his specials. We call it the color tumbler, where you drag and drop different colors from your color swatch in this mixed color pot. And as a result, you have a bundle of colors. You spin it like that, and the color will change and pick different parts of this color scheme. So now I don't have to go to my color swatch every 5 minutes or every minute or every whatever and choose a different color. I now picked a scheme. It's very nice and less distracting. As well as stamping one cube at a time, I can draw with the cube. I can smear with it, as we call it. And this allows you to make much more organic shapes. So initially I was placing one cube at a time, and now I am doing this smeary operation. Another operation I'm showing here is blending. Again, just by doing a shortcut twist a dial on my controllers. All the game controllers are full of buttons and triggers, so we were using that. This feature here allows me to blend my cubes together in a softer way. So like you can see it better with the sphere. And here is how you just place spheres, but if I squash the sphere and blend it, it creates these organic blends that you get with the next object. And I do the cut gesture, and now I am pushing indentations that are very soft. So even though what it seems like you only have a bunch of shapes and colors, all these secondary features and all these secondary technologies under the hood are available at a twist of one of your controllers, allowing you to go from form to another in very instant ways. Here I've changed now into what we call the hard blend, which blends between the shape and the next shape using a more faceted style rather than the soft style. So as you can see, in a matter of minutes, a bunch of primitive shapes have turned into more advanced looking forms without going too much to menus. I have been going to menus, but equivalent to an artist using a palette rather than every single second changing and tuning operations. Now I'm going to show you the loose end of the spectrum, where I pick a green sphere here, but by twisting one of my other dials, you can see the sphere is turning into a more fuzzy form and a more impressionistic sphere. This is what we call the loose end of the spectrum. Thanks to Alex, Simon, and Mark Adami, our fantastic engine programmers, we got this. This here is basically covering the volumes with painterly marks. So now I can still paint with forms, but in a more impressionistic way. And I can blend that with the other features. Here I'm using the soft blend combined with the loose end of the spectrum to mix the loose impressionistic model with the previously placed tight forms. And as you can see, the possibilities are endless in how we can start getting these nice textural results without having textures. We just have these kind of painterly forms or clean forms. And of course, now I will show you another way as well of the painterly engine. Instead of relying on forms now, I am going to paint directly with those painterly flecks, as we call them. And these here are just like placing, now it's an even more painterly end of the spectrum. Very good for making foliage and hair, and even just making your scene a bit more impressionistic and loose. We found so many uses of it, and our brilliant community have taken it way further. But I'm just showing you here that within this small palette, you can go from a cube to these very fuzzy 3D impressionistic marks just by changing one tool to another, and most of your focus is on, I want that in green, or I want that in pink, or I want that in blue, rather than thinking too much about very alien concepts. I now made this fuzzy impressionistic form, and now I'm just copying it around, and you can see that even that 3D form is an asset in Dream that you can use to your liking. But what if I want to change something after the fact? Again, one of the concepts in Dream that we really cared about. And here you can pick another style. Another style here, I picked this dotty style, and I can pick different colors as well. I can say, I wish I did this in orange. So you can just pick the tinting or the coating tool and spray it. Now, one of the things that we cared about here was not, we have ways of changing these by exposing the properties of the object, and you can tune one by one. But by doing it in that particular way, spraying it and adding or removing of more of your spray allows you to very quickly get this kind of variety. Again, some of our brilliant concepts and these sensitive tools were explorations by our fabulous Anton in the tool design. That was then our brilliant tools team. Liam, for example, who is a genius in tool design, has done so much other concepts which I will point out in the sculpture tools and beyond. And of course we have Bogdan and Matt and Som and Dave and wonderful people. But these tools have, look here, for example, I am changing this cube, tinted it in blue, chosen another tool, the style tool, to expand the flex on it, and then I painted the inner part of the cube, just showing you what it looks like to create in Dream. And the reason I am wanting that is that initially, in the beginning of here I've just used a water brush to make those paint marks move like waves on top of my just so what was a blue cube turned into a sea using a few tools and a few parameters. Again, if I want to do environmental effects, we have gizmos like that allow you to move the sun around. Under the hood, there is so much clever rendering stuff going on, but here is just an example of what do we mean by attractive creation in 3D. And why is that important? I will go into later. And what has it led to in terms of outcome from our artists that use it? I will move on to later parts of the presentation because of time. But this here at least tries to illustrate the point that these UI ideas combined together help create this attractive concept, or attractive to create concept. And here I'm combing the direction of the strokes as well. So the next part, I'm going to try to touch on some of the core technologies that helped us achieve this. How can we have an engine that goes from these very tight forms where we can have shaders that look like next-gen graphics and go all the way to this wonderful painterly Turner-esque kind of results, all seamless and all in one space? How can that be possible? How can we do models that are that dense? This model by Francis, one of our fabulous artists, a senior principal and head of animation, and he the model here, you can see how the different parts of the face are all carved together, or carved very delicately. One of these models, if you see it in a traditional tool, would weigh like a ton, very heavy. How did we do that in Dream? But first, how did we even do these lovely blendy results? So Simon and Alex worked on using sign distance fields as one of the core technologies used to achieve these blended forms, for example. The reason we are able to have these insanely dense and expensive models is that our brilliant programmers devised this way of storing the instructions that are used to make the model, as opposed to storing the model itself. And that stuff I'm repeating after they explained to me, but I'm just showing how much cleverness is going on under the hood to allow for these sensitive tools to happen and these expressive philosophies to see the light. One of these models, this model particularly, would be 600 megabytes or 620 megabytes in any other software. In Dream, it's not even 1 megabyte. Thanks to one of Simon's big ideas is this dynamic LOD. We use voxels in Dream, but once this model is either far away or small, it instantly does a level of detail change for you automatically. So as a result, you are able to do things like that, where I will demonstrate here a very cool video that shows how the LOD works. Here you can see the very dense, very heavy model, and I'm just cloning it ridiculously to make a whole series of copies from it. And our cloning tools, by the way, are something else because of the sort of one-to-one input. You can do some fun things with it. So now I've copied it again and again and again. Remember, this is this crazy head full of this unbelievable detail. And I'm just copying it over and over and over, making a whole world with it. And you can see how fast the computing and the evaluation of the scene is. These are some of the underlying technologies of Dream. Here, for example, Simon did this fast pass system, which I really like to stop at, because I showed you in my video of the smearing with the cube how interesting that technique is. And that technique allowed Francis to do, for example, his very fine model, where is but our early explorations of this technique, they were very, very slow. Whenever we did a smear, it would chug. The computing simply couldn't hack it. And Simon here did this technology which allowed you to put all the muscle of the computing on the mark you're making and cut instantly and real time the shapes that you're working with to make all the effort of the machine go into the model or the mark you're making, and making it very responsive. So without that, even though you had the hardware, you had the voxels, you had the rendering engine, you had all the cool things, but without that fast pass, that technique would have died. And because of all these concepts, you get artwork that looks like that, where the artist can go from the tight to loose. Every mark, every idiosyncrasy, every decision you can see. Like the pencil analogy or the piano analogies that we were talking about earlier. Another concept from the technology showing how the technology and the vision work together, where you can see the painted looseness parts of the model, the looser parts of the model. At the bottom left, you can see that they are bigger cubes, showing that these are lower resolution parts of the model. So the aesthetic of the painterliness was also used as a way of being efficient on the memory or of the model, which also shows how the technology and the vision were working together. We did so much work on this painterly engine. Here are just some slides showing a tool Simon made for me to create all these flecks. Each and every one of the flecks in Dream is a full 3D form that we designed to and designed its form to suit that particular style. And these are some of the shots. And our fog, for example, also captures the painterliness of our engine. We really wanted to have a definitive or a distinctive thumbprint for Dream, but that still allows individual styles to flourish. Why do all this? Why do these sensitive tools? Why do these technologies of rendering? In order to capture individual style. That is the holy grail of this project. The beauty of these choices led to artwork that looks like that. This is done by our principal artist and amazing talented John Eckersley, who did a lot of the scene production design of Art's Dream, our game made in Dream. And this is one of his sets. He would create these scenes in Dream that look entirely like his own style of art and light them using the amazing lighting tools and features. And then you go to another side of John's style where it's more inspired by graphic novels, and you can see the top part of the scene, how it looks like an illustration from a graphic novel. And then you change to entirely different styles in Dream, where you can go to Maya's world here, where she created a painterly, watercolory looking scenes. And those characters by Francis and Mike, animation, the very different styles that you can get from the tool. You can see that every artist's thumbprint is coming through the same system, just using those cubes and shapes and stuff that I have shown before. This here was Emily's masterpiece, where she modeled and designed a lot of these characters together with Steve and Mike on animation, and the brilliance that was achieved here. But you can see again, using those same tools, how different styles can come across. Another poetic scene from John in the same Art's Dream piece. And all that shows you, here's a video that I think any Dream user will have seen in our gallery, but this shows you some of the varieties that come from our artists using game controllers from the PlayStation machine, the UI ideas and engine brilliance that all added together to capture the individual styles of each and every one. That's one of John's again. And here is Francis's model that we were analyzing earlier. And you can see, I know Francis's style of shapes and forms. That's Dan Goddard, our fantastic Dan. His style is very expressive, very artistic. And Emily again. And these are all done in crazy times. Anybody who used Dream can also know that part of Dream, how fast it is to do all this. This is one of Menlou's, looking like a graphic novel. Again, one of Dan's. I love these scenes because they really remind me of the artists who made them. Maya's jungle here, beautiful colors, and reminds me of all her beautiful illustrations, and Menlou's still life, painterly still life. And one of mine here, like a sort of weird, disturbed thing. And I'm hoping, and we all are hoping, that Dream would affect and inspire other disciplines. We think that the visualizations of architecture, for example, when you see, these are some samples made in Dream of architectural thinking and shapes, from interior designs to exterior locations, from very loose sketches of ideas to more committed and refined designs like that. These are all done in Dreams. So Dream as a very serious architectural tool, or a painterly architectural musing suite, all the way to theater. Theater is all about mood and lighting, and because Dream is a game engine, it's got it all. It's got all these kind of bits and pieces, and I tried here to collate some of the work we did throughout the development that corresponds to a different discipline. If you want to use dream as an art musing tool to make forms and shapes without any objective and goal, just for the joy of the process itself. Graphic design, industrial design, our fantastic John Beach, one of our senior principal designers, and he is a super legend in detail modeling, and he uses the same dream that is used to do the very impressionistic stuff to do very meticulous detailed props. And some of the ones at the bottom are by John Eckersley. And again, you can see the variety of detailed modeling you can get. But then you have storytelling. People like Emily and M.A. and Castro use dream to make stories and tell stories. One of our brilliant designers, Pete, and his own child, they did a storytelling piece which was very moving and very touching. So you can use some of these aspects of dream to make other disciplines, fashion design, and designing like fabulous costumes. I think dream has a lot of scope there as well. Sculpture, and I always differentiate between sculpture and modeling, because there is a sculptor touches the sculptures, their hands or chisel, and really has a very tactile relationship with the form that I think dream is one of the tools that really captures that. I am currently modeling a piece for something we're working on now, and I've been using a very wide range of all these different functions and features and things, and we're achieving very, very, very cool results that are very sculptural but very particular to the user and the person who is making them. This is a 3D printed piece made in Dream by Francis, and we still don't have the 3D printed tools in the actual product, but it's in our lists, of things we want to do. But the biggest medium I think dream can help in, personally, because of course there's so much facets I said to dream, but one of them anyway is pre-visualization. Concept art, has so far been a static medium where you use painting tools to do one single shot, or you use 3D tools to do a limited version of it in low quality or cubes and stuff. But very rarely where you have a scenery like that you can completely explore with all the muscle of video game tools, but you can do it in days. So for visualization and pre-visualization of any style, any genre, I think dream is definitely the tool to go to. And character design, and of course beyond, things that we haven't even imagined, like the calculator in Little Big Planet. Who knows what dream will help progress in expression. And as I said in the beginning of the presentation, I am not touching the surface of all the other facets of dream. Animation, you can see Todd and Ed down here performing live with the music and sound tools. This car on the right is one of Steve's incredible karting prototypes that feels as slick as I've ever felt playing a game. And you can see the technology involved in doing it and the feeling of it. All that would make many, many other talks. But the last point I really wanted to reiterate in this presentation before we close is this one here. The beauty of dream and the alignment of the tools had to come from so many concepts. As we said, the dream is a curation, browsing, storytelling, audio, surfing, programming, art, game, music. All these are different facets of dream. Even though this presentation was focusing mainly on the art, what was involved to make that happen, and I tried to do it justice, was having very obsessive vision, where we concepted and kept obsessing about it. The hardware of the PlayStation kit and all its devices, the incredible software from our engine and tools and programmers, the earnest use of the tools while we're creating by all of our artists and our amazing QA, and then the insane production team that we have, that are the most creative production team I've ever seen, that really understand creativity and process and uniqueness of everybody's styles and try to find the miraculous way of making it work together. And then the packaging, the graphic design, like the graphic design of Dream alone, and how we present it as bokeh icons, went through bazillion incarnations. The names that were involved, from Amo to Martin to Miguel and beyond that, so many people work on our, and then we have our UX and UI teams doing all the universe with Emily and the Dream University. It's just endless, really. Then the tutorials, the community team, the localization that translate all these tools to all the language. All that alignment is what made this experience possible, of hardware, technology, and vision. So I really want to thank Media Molecule and the Media Molecule team for making this art tool possible. And as a result, we all are going to enjoy it. And my last note I wanted to say was, why create at all? And I think I've been thinking about it, and I really wanted to end on that note. And I think I have one simple answer: to be seen. To be seen. Thank you.